What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of Behind Enemy Lines, a Texas A&M football podcast. I am your host, Tony Catalina from the Austin American-Statesman. I got Sam Sklar here, the Mississippi State beat reporter. Sam, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, Tony. I'm selfishly I'm a little bit excited for this game because it'll be my first trip to Texas A&M, and it's going to be a night game. I believe they're doing a blackout theme from what I read and
Yes.
saw. I'm excited to just see the atmosphere of it all. I think it'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think just on a personal level for somebody who hasn't been here, like night games are different, just like anywhere else in the SEC. The black jerseys obviously add another level to it, and for A&M to be as high as rated, as ranked as they are, there's a lot of like buzz around here. So I think for an opposing beat writer who doesn't really have a rooting interest, it's about as cool as atmosphere as you can ask for a road contest.
And everyone has said that the press box sways a little bit, so
Oh yeah.
I'm interested to experience that too.
Yeah, that is something I'm still getting used to. So, no, it's gonna be a good time. I'm glad I know that you're gonna be there because it's always good to have a familiar face there. But before we kind of just jump into it, like what I'm sitting here and I was looking at the lines. How come this game is a double-digit favor for A&M? I feel like, and I'm not a betting man, I just feel like that's a little absurd from what the way Mississippi State played last week against Tennessee.
I did notice that. I think when I saw this morning or yesterday when I checked, it was like 14 or something.
Yeah.
And in my head, I thought it was maybe going to be around 10.
Mm.
But I think that Mississippi State is at a disadvantage on the line of scrimmage is a big reason why. Their starting right tackle, Albert Reese, went down with an injury in the Tennessee game, and they weren't really able to run the ball very well after he went down, and they already lost another starting tackle for the season in week one.
Mm.
So that could be a reason why. And I mean, as great as Mississippi State played, and I don't want to discredit them. I mean, they lost by 7 to a top 15 team in overtime. It's clearly a much better team than it was last season. But that was just a wild game. I mean, there was 3 turnovers that Mississippi State scored touchdowns off of, and Tennessee scored 2 defensive touchdowns in the game. And there were some touchdowns that were called back from penalties and things like that.
Mm.
And so I'm not trying to discredit what Mississippi State put together because it was an impressive game and one they honestly could have won and maybe had a good case to. But I think that's probably why.
It's interesting you mentioned that because it's good to get that's why I like bringing somebody on like yourself because when you look at the A&M game, right, and you see 16 to 10 box score, you think, "Oh, they grinded it out." And then you're there, you watch it and you're like, A&M shot themselves on the foot. This is a game they should have won by double digits, you know? So it's really fascinating to say, "Oh, it's close," but it felt like it was really wonky in a lot of different ways. But with that being said, I look at this offensive unit, and it's the top five group in the conference. Obviously, Blake Shapen doing some good things, and some wide receivers out there making plays. What is this unit's strengths? What is the weaknesses, and what have you seen thus far through the first, five or so games?
So running the ball has been a really big key for Mississippi State, and they've done that really well with Fluff Bothwell, the transfer from South Alabama. Everyone loves him. The name is obviously a reason why, and he's the irony of it all is that his name is not actually like the type of running back he is. He's like the opposite. He's like super
No fluff.
physical. He's big. He's running guys over. Like he's a ton of fun to watch. But Mississippi State also has Devon Booth, who is it's kind of the two of them are kind of complementing each other, which has been gone really well for Mississippi State. Blake Shapen's been steady, but honestly, the past 2 games have been a little bit shaky and something that I think Mississippi State fans are a little bit concerned about, where in the beginning of the season they were hitting all these deep shots, they were scoring from far is what Mississippi State kind of says and Jeff Lebby and all that. But the pass game has been a little out of sync the last couple of games. And so I think that's kind of a concern coming into this is, how is Mississippi State able to adjust as defenses have now adjusted to Mississippi State's offense.
Yeah, and then so obviously kind of staying on the offense side of the ball there. A big piece to the A&M offense is the guy who played for Mississippi State last year, Mario Craver. Obviously, I know the beat reporter role, and you're not really spending too much attention paying to other teams, but the way Mario Craver has played, do you or somebody, in your scope, Did you see this type of production or ability from him when he was there? And just how much of a loss has that been for him to not be there right now?
I don't think it's a shock. I think everyone knew his potential and his talent, and that Mario Craver could be a really good wide receiver, and he showed that as a freshman when he played last season. I mean, I don't think people thought he would be leading the SEC in receiving yards per game at this point, but I think Mississippi State had a lot to replace at wide receiver. He was one of them, and then they also lost Kevin Coleman, who was the team's leading wide receiver, who transferred to Missouri. But honestly, I don't think Mississippi State has missed a beat much in its wide receiver room. They got Brennan Thompson from Oklahoma, who's the guy who caught the game-winning touchdown against Arizona State in week 2, and Anthony Evans, who transferred from not Virginia, Georgia. He's been really good too. And so I think a lot of it was making sure to get the right guys in the room, getting the right fit. And I remember in the offseason, Jeff Lebby had a quote, and he said something like, "As long as I'm the head coach, wide receiver is never going to be a problem here." And honestly, that's been kind of true. So, would you like to have the talent of Mario Craver on the team? Absolutely. I mean, who wouldn't? But I don't think it has actually negatively impacted Mississippi State as much as some people might think it would.
Yeah, and that's so interesting in the transfer portal era because you like you said, Levy's like, yeah, we're gonna be fine a wide receiver as long as I'm here, we're gonna do it. And for A&M, it was like Mario Craver is like a need. Like this is a guy that we need to come in and change the way this offensive, firepower works. And he was one of the bigger, additions his team's had, and he's obviously paid off. But it's really fascinating to kind of see the this is something that's just going to be the new norm of college football, right? Like a guy has a decent season, then breaks out, or vice versa. So, changing the page a little bit, going the other side of the ball defensively. What have you seen from that group? Where are some of the strengths, and just, how does it feel coming into an environment where it's going to be constant noise, 106, 107,000 people in there? Can they stand up to this A&M's high-powered offense that they've kind of shown lately?
The defense for Mississippi State is extremely better than last season. Now, when I say that, I don't think that means that they're top tier in the SEC. I think it's more of an indictment of how bad the defense was a year ago. I mean, dead last in the SEC in almost every single category. Kind of like what Arkansas is dealing with right now, where it's just so bad. I think in the stack of the SEC, Mississippi State's defense is probably somewhere in the middle, average. But that's really all Mississippi State needs because the offense with Jeff Lebby has been pretty good. And, a big key for them was upgrading on the line of scrimmage, getting more depth and guys on defense who can stop the run and generate a pass rush because that was virtually non-existent last season. And Mississippi State's done a pretty good job with that. They had a transfer named Will Whitson, who's an edge rusher who was phenomenal to start the season. But he suffered a season-ending injury in the first half of week 2 against Arizona State. Yet he still leads the team in tackles for loss and sacks. So
It's crazy.
he was awesome, and that's kind of like one of the biggest what ifs for them is if he were still playing, like maybe that defense could be really, really good. But Mississippi State, they gave up 41 points, or Tennessee scored 41 points last week in against Mississippi State, but 7 of those points were scored in overtime. 14 of those points were scored off of defensive touchdowns. So, you do the math, and the defense actually did play pretty well and had 3 takeaways against Tennessee. So, finally, Mississippi State's defense is competitive and gives Mississippi State a chance, which was just didn't happen last season.
And it's interesting when you look at the unit, right? Three levels, the D line, linebackers, and the back end. Where do you think the strength is for this Mississippi State, defense? Because we've seen A&M, run for 200 plus this last week, and they've, put up big numbers in the passing game. Where do you think the strength is, or where Mississippi can find an advantageous matchup there?
It's hard to say because going into last week, statistically, Mississippi State's pass defense was phenomenal. Before last week, no team had thrown for over 200 passing yards against Mississippi State. The corners were playing super well, but also Mississippi State played 4 straight non-conference games to open the season. And so it was kind of like, well, you got to give them credit. The numbers look great, but have they really played anyone with a strong passing offense? And, Joey Aguilar in Tennessee had some success throwing the ball against them last week. And so I think that the corners and secondary are still pretty good. Kelly Jones is kind of their number one cornerback. He's 6'4", so he's kind of like a linebacker safety build who plays corner. But he did a really good job against Jordan Tyson of Arizona State in week 2. Um, it's harder, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint what the strength is. I think it's pretty balanced right now, honestly.
Not to put you on the spot here, but I don't necessarily know the turnover there in the back end of that defense. But I wanted to ask you, just football wise, not even just Mississippi State, when you have a game where it's Mario Craver, a guy who was on the team last year, versus his old team, where do you think the advantage lies? Is that in the defense that went against him a ton in practice, and a defensive coordinator that may know his strengths and weaknesses, or do you think Mario Craver, inspired football playmaker, going to go out there and make plays? Like, where do you think that matchup lies?
Ooh, that's a tough call, honestly, because like you said, I think like Mississippi State returned a handful of their corners like from last season. Like Kelly Jones was on the team a year ago, so like he was probably going up against Mario Craver in practice a lot a year ago, and but then vice versa as well. So it's hard to really say in terms of who has an advantage. I don't think that Mississippi State schematically changed a whole lot of their defense. So like it's not like Mario Craver is going against an unfamiliar defense. Like they didn't fire any of their defensive assistants last season. They just hired more of them. And so I think that could maybe bode well for Mario Craver, I guess, if it's not a like schematic overhaul. But I mean, I think that's going to be a matchup that everyone's going to be watching, and it will be talked about a lot going into the game.
For sure. That's the game within the game that I'm really intrigued to watch, and I know I'm not alone there. Speaking of something else, though, kind of changing gears once again, is an issue that is plagued A&M for sure, and it looks by the numbers, it's plaguing, Mississippi State too, penalties. Right, both teams obviously struggling. I think it was 9.4 per game for Mississippi State, 9.5 per game for A&M. What is Levy's conversation there? What's his talking point? How do they kind of just fix that? Otherwise, we're going to see a lot of laundry on the field Saturday night.
So I haven't looked at the updated numbers for this week, but I know going into last week, Mississippi State had committed the second most penalties in the country, just total penalties. Obviously not good at all. I think they were a little bit better against Tennessee. It looks like they had 6 penalties, I think, which
Yeah,
so that
that's
I think
correct.
they were
Yeah,
averaging almost like 11 a game or something like that.
yeah.
Um,
They cut it almost in half. So I mean, that's progress, right? So
Yeah, it's progress. A lot of them have been procedural penalties, false starts, illegal shifts, illegal formations, things like that that you wouldn't really expect from, a head coach that's an offensive guru kind of guy. They've had to shuffle around a lot on the offensive line to start the season, so that could be kind of a repercussion of some of it, but also just, playing disciplined and, not there was a drive against Tennessee where Mississippi State committed back-to-back personal foul penalties. So they're just, free 30 yards for Tennessee. And of course they scored on that drive. So that was pretty concerning. But overall, I would say that at least it's trended better or trending better right now. We'll see how that goes because it was just one game, but it's been a
yeah,
little bit better at least.
for sure. And before we kind of wrap up and get you out of here, if you have an article or anything that's coming out, I don't want you to spoil it, but do you have a sense for how this game is going to go, and do you have a prediction cranked up, or do you want to wait for that?
I haven't thought too hard yet about my score prediction, but I had a feeling you might ask me as we were talking, so I've been thinking about it in the last couple of minutes, and I think I'm gonna go with Texas A&M by 10. I think they win something like 30-20.
Hmm.
I just think that Mississippi State, they've played at home the last month. They haven't gone away since week 1. And I think that this environment that they're walking into is going to be raucous. It's going to be a really tough, tough place to win. But I do think, though, that Mississippi State's not the same pushover as it was a year ago. So I think Miss Texas A&M fans will see that on Saturday, that, the team is actually competitive. And if you don't play well, you could lose. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, no, I think I mean, last year was no cakewalk, right? Walking into, Starkville and the Cowbells and, A&M only walked out of there, I believe, with a 10-point win, and it wasn't as clean and smooth as they would like to see. So, I think that that's a fair point. I haven't thought about the score just yet, but I'm probably in the same ballpark as you. And the way A&M played last week, if they continue to play like that, Mississippi State's the type of team that can surprise you and kind of derail the season. So, Sam, I really do appreciate you taking the time. If you want to plug your Twitter, your X, your handle, everything you do great work, and I want people to go and check that out for you.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter and X at Sklar Sam underscore. That's SKLARSAM underscore. And all my work is just on the Clarion Ledger website at clarionledger.com.
Perfect, man. I appreciate it, and hit me up if you need any barbecue requests. I know the food there is College Station's. It's underrated for food, man. So I appreciate you taking the time, and I'll see you this weekend.
Yeah, thanks for having me.